Today, it's far more expensive to be poor. Hello again, it's Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics. Well, noticed post covering finance and property news with a distinctively Australian flavour. Well, in my surveys, I've been looking at household expenditure, and over the last year or so, with prices rising fast, people are spending more on everyday goods at the shops. And those on lower incomes are paying relatively more as a proportion of their total income than those with bigger budgets and bigger incomes. Maybe no surprise, but it is a concerning trend because it essentially means that the pressure is on those with limited incomes. Now, in the UK consumers there are facing significantly bigger increases in the price of some budget food items, including pasta, crisps and bread, according to new experimental data, as poorer families bear the brunt of the cost of living crisis. And highlighting the challenge for low-income households, figures from the Office of National Statistics, the ONS, showed that prices for some low-cost groceries increased at a much faster rate than general inflation in the UK in the year to April 2022. For example, the price of pasta jumped the most from a basket of 30 basic food items compiled by the government statisticians, with an increase of 50% from a year earlier. That's more than 5 times the headline rate of inflation of 9% for the same period. And the figures also highlighted above-average inflation prices for crisps, up 17%, bread up 16%, minced beef up 16%, and rice up 15%. Now, the ONS decided to compile the experimental data, which is basically tracking price changes for the lowest cost everyday groceries sold by supermarkets online, after the anti-poverty campaigner Jack Monroe highlighted the risks facing the poorest households in Britain from much faster increases in the price of budget brand items. And with rising prices seen across many goods and services, they've looked at the question of how prices of everyday grocery items have changed for those lowest cost products. They applied, therefore, a new and, well, frankly, highly experimental method using web-scraped supermarket data to capture the price changes of everyday grocery items. So over the year to April 2022, they collected online grocery price quotes from 7 major supermarket retailers' websites, including Asda, the Co-op, Iceland, Morrisons, Sainsbury's, Tesco and Waitrose. For each item and retailer, the price of the lowest priced product available was selected after adjusting for the size of the item over time to see how it changed. Now, this data actually differs significantly from the data used to compile the official measure of inflation for food and non-alcoholic beverages. For that, local price collectors go and collect 50,000 prices by visiting sampled retailers in over 140 locations across the UK. But for this exercise, prices were assessed for 30 everyday food and drink items, covering fresh fruit and vegetables, cupboard staples, chilled products, as well as meat and fish. A total of 30 items was chosen as a good trade-off between the coverage of a high proportion of expenditure and the time and complexity costs of adding more items to the analysis. The approach started with the items with the highest expenditure and the largest quantity bought by households in the lowest income decile. But other factors, such as the substitution of items, the representativeness of other comparable items, and including a broad range of products, was also factored in. For example, prices of minced beef are likely to respond to similar economic factors to other beef and even other meat products. The lowest priced everyday grocery items have seen a notable variation in price changes, with some items showing increases of over 15% while others fell in price. And there was a wide range of price movements for the lowest prices when looking over the year to April 2022. For 13 of the 30 sampled items monitored, the average lowest price across the 7 retailers increased at a faster rate than the latest available official consumer price inflation measure for food and non-alcoholic beverages, a 6.7% increase over the 12 months to April 2022. For 10 items, the lowest cost price increased by more than 10%, and for 5 of those 10 items, the lowest cost price rose by 15% or more. The items where the lowest prices rose at the fastest rate were pasta, up 50% between April 21 and April 22, crisps at 17%, bread at 16%, minced beef at 16%, and rice at 15%. For 6 of the 30 items, the lowest prices fell on average over the 12 months to April 2022. Price decreases were measured for potatoes, down 14%, cheese down 7%, pizza down 4%, chips down 3%, sausages down 3%, and apples down 1%. In cash terms, the largest price rises on average were measured for beef mince, up 32p to £2.34 for 500 grams, and chicken breasts up 28 pence to £3.50 for 600 grams. Pasta prices rose by 17 pence, while vegetable oil was up 14 pence and crisps and rice by 12 pence. However, some low-cost items fell in price, including a 14% fall in potatoes and a 7% drop in the price of cheese, as well as for pizza and chips and sausages. Now, it's important to consider that for each of the 30 items, the overall figure can be made up of different price movements at the product level. Take, for example, vegetable oil, which could be drawn from a variety of products, including sunflower oil and rapeseed oil, where prices rose 9%. However, for vegetable oil, there were instances where they were missing some product-level price data at some retailers for the cheapest oils. In one case, this caused them to track the price of a more expensive oil. For these reasons, the estimate of 9% should be treated with additional caution. It's also worth noting that the exact timing of price increases varied depending on the individual products. For example, the lowest price for baked beans rose by 10% over October and November 2021, while pasta prices rose 32% over November and December 2021. Other items saw a more gradual increase or decrease in the lowest price. For example, the lowest price of potatoes trended downward over the 12 months to that 14% lower in April 2022 compared with a year ago. And several items have had a much more stable lowest price throughout the entire period, such as sausages and yogurt. Combining the lowest cost items into an index shows that overall, the prices for the cheapest items have risen since April 2021 in line with official measures of inflation. Overall, the grocery index combines the lowest prices of 30 everyday items, and it does follow that similar trend to official measures of inflation for the food and non-alcoholic beverage component of the consumer price index, including owner-occupiers' housing costs. The lowest prices of the 30 everyday items, weighted by retailer and item, rose by 6% in the year. And when compared to March 2022, with April 2022, the lowest price rose by 0.9%. Now, there are some strengths and limitations which we need to be aware of over the month from March to April. The item that saw the largest increase in the lowest price were breakfast cereals, up 6%, mixed frozen vegetables and vegetable oil, both increased by 5%. Looking across all the items over time, there was some evidence of shrinkflation, with pack sizes reducing but costing the same. Since the item size was collected by the web scrapers, that analysis accounts for changes in the product size. It's also worth noting that there was evidence that sugar-free or low-salt versions of some lower-cost items are often the same price as the standard versions of those products. And items may not always be available in store or online, which is reflected in the data picked up by the web scrapers. Value ranges often represent a substantial saving, and where they are not available, the price difference to the next lowest priced available item was often big. By looking at all the available products within an item category, the difference between the lowest cost and the next lowest price item can be calculated. For over 2/3 of the sample item, the costs of substituting an item would have been at least 20% higher than the previous lowest cost item. For 4 items, the difference was more than 50%. So as a result, the measure of the lowest price presented in the analysis can be sensitive to product availability and the specific products that are being substituted. Different approaches to substituting items can result in very different trends. The estimates presented are, of course, highly experimental and are subject to great uncertainty. All average estimates will reflect a combination of different price movements for each individual product. And there are several limitations for the analysis. An important one is that the data is based on prices and product characteristics, including pack size, that have been scraped from retailers' websites. This means that the available product represents the retailer's online catalogue rather than the range of products available or bought in local stores that month. And they also make the point that the data to say that the lowest priced product is actively being purchased by consumers, although their data set includes price and product details, they do not have sales or expenditure data. All they know is that it was available to purchase from the retailer's website. Where a product selected in the previous month was not available in the collected data, a substitution was made to the next lowest price similar available item. A substitution was also made where a new similar item was available to lower price. So it's important to note that the findings are very sensitive to the approach for substituting products, and data on online price quotes and product availability may not reflect in-store conditions. And the difference between the cheapest and the next cheapest item is often substantial, and so any type of substitution can have a notable impact on the index and corresponding price changes over the year. The impact of substitution can act to either increase or decrease the price index at any point in the time series. For example, the lowest priced or value range item may not happen to be available at the start of the time period or may come back in stock at the end of the time period, and that would act to reduce the index in later periods. Now, Monroe, who held talks with the ONS over compiling the data, welcomed the publication of the figures, saying they backed up our own research and evidence from January. The hikes in the value brands and basics have been much higher than average inflation statistics, she tweeted. As I've said now for 10 years, and as many others have pointed out before and alongside me, it's far more expensive to be poor. And now the literal experts in data gathering and statistics are helpfully, methodically, forensically backing that up. This feels like huge progress. Analysis from the Institute of Fiscal Studies in the UK suggests that the increases in gas and electricity bills expected this October could lead to average annual inflation rates of as high as 14% for the poorest tenth of households, compared with 8% for the richest. This is because lower income families spend a larger share of their budgets on basics, such as food and energy, than richer households. The April rate of UK inflation hit its highest rate since 1982, against a backdrop of soaring global energy prices, exacerbated by Russia's war in Ukraine, and the Bank of England has warned the measure of the annual jump in living costs could hit 10% later this year. It's interesting that after heavy criticism from Monroe for removing some of their budget ranges from stores earlier this year, supermarkets say they are cutting the price of key everyday items in response to the cost of living crisis. Asda launched the first wave of its new essential budget range this week with 60 items, including fresh meat, fish, and a selection of fresh produce. The range will gradually increase to 293 products by the end of the year. And Sainsbury's said it would plough a further £500 million into keeping prices down, with the focus on key items such as milk, eggs, meat, fish, fruit and vegetables, and household essentials. Now, we don't have anything similar here in Australia that I've found, and it is interesting to note that if the cheapest value brands are not available, then people have to substitute significantly higher prices. And based on my local research here, it does appear that in some places, some of those value brands have disappeared. I wonder whether we're going through the same cycle as in the UK. But the takeaway from this, and it's a very important point to make, those on lower incomes are more exposed to the price pressures and potentially may make bad purchasing choices simply because some of those are cheaper than the more nutritious and health-giving food alternatives. This is something we're going to need to watch very carefully, and I would suggest that the ABS should be providing more detail of the value brands and their costs so that we can get a parallel piece of analysis underway in Australia. Meantime, I'll do a little bit of monitoring from the websites and maybe even try and construct my own index, because I think this is a very, very important question. The bottom line is this: those on relatively low incomes are being much more adversely impacted by the cost of living pressures. And I'm not sure yet that in Australia the support measures are adequate to provide a safety net. I'm Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics. Many thanks for watching, and I'll see you again next time.